steal it. If we bridge this gap, I can see you through the curtains of the waterfall. When I lost it, yeah, you held my hand, but I tossed it. Didn't understand you were waiting as I dove into the waterfall. So say Geronimo, say Geronimo, say Geronimo, say Geronimo, say Geronimo, say Geronimo, say Geronimo. Can you feel miles away, miles away, miles away? Can you feel well, we rushed it.
Tardelli, gol, gol, Tardelli, raddoppio, Tardelli, uno splendido gol di Tardelli.
Giannini da Baggio, a terra Bielik, triangolazione Baggio, Baggio che converge, Baggio, finta di Baggio, tiro, grandissimo gol di Baggio. Messa fuori, c'è Pirlo, ancora Pirlo di tacco, tiro, gol, Grosso, gol di Grosso.
The Dutch are running wild in Brazil as the Netherlands put 5 goals past reigning world champions Spain and put the ghosts of 2010's World Cup finals to bed, at least partially. Hello, I'm Drew Farman. Welcome to the Forza Italian Football World Cup podcast. Day 2 is in the books with 3 big games now complete as Mexico took on Cameroon, the previously mentioned Netherlands versus Spain, and Chile versus Australia. And to help me discuss these games, I'm joined by 3 excellent writers. They're very handsome and sometimes unpredictable as well. First, I've got Forza Italian Football's Padraig Whalen. Padraig, how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, I'm good, Drew. It's good to have the first day of proper action, I suppose you could call it, under our belts with the 3 games, so I'm glad to be on and speaking about it with everyone.
And it has to be a lot better than the League of Ireland game you were at earlier tonight.
Well, yes, I think it wouldn't be too hard, Drew. No goals and 2 red cards, so pretty much sums that one up.
What a brilliant game. Well, also joining us tonight is another Forza Italian Football regular, and that's Connor Clancy. Connor, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing okay considering I'm getting through. I got through my match report tonight based on pure coffee and caffeine, to be honest. I got very little sleep last night, so this should be fun.
Well, how are you enjoying the tournament without Ireland in it this time around?
A lot more than I enjoyed Euro 2012, to be honest, because I can actually enjoy the games rather than sit through them suffering.
Well, good to hear. And also joining us is from here in the city, and that's Ian Capasso. Ian joining us from Boston tonight. Ian, how are you?
Great. Time difference is to my advantage for once.
It certainly is, as the rest of us are dragging ass tonight. You are fresh like a daisy.
I am. It's beautiful 6:30 here right now.
All right. Well, gentlemen, it was a great day of football. We had some excellent games today. Maybe not so much the first game of the day, but how are you guys enjoying the World Cup so far? It's only day 2, I know.
I think it's been good, Drew. I think we've had goals and excitement, I suppose, in almost every game so far. I think that was kind of one of the worries, I suppose, after the last World Cup, when it probably won't go down as one of the all-time classics. And I think there was worries this time as well that the heat and that kind of thing might play a part in teams maybe sitting back, maybe holding on to the ball a bit too much, but we haven't really saw that. I think if it wasn't maybe for the result that Spain got tonight, I think refereeing and officiating might be a bigger talking point given what happened with Brazil last night, and then the Mexico-Cameroon game when Mexico had 2 perfectly good goals ruled out. But overall, I think you can't argue the goals have been flowing in the games, and it's been very exciting so far, and we're only 4 games in.
Well, we'll get on to those calls in that Mexico game, and we'll talk about the officiating as well. Ian, Connor, how are you enjoying the tournament so far?
I think it's been great. I would agree that I'm kind of very gleeful about the results for the Dutch, because I think it kind of took a little bit off the focus. There was, like we said, there was a lot of there's some controversy in the first 2 games, Brazil game and Mexico game, and I think that's established, of course, a definitive storyline, I guess, at the outset of everything. So I think that's, been great for everybody, unless you were Spanish or a member of the Spanish national team or Vicente del Bosque.
I definitely would go along with that as well. I mean, there's been a lot of unpredictability surrounding it off the pitch, with not knowing whether it was going to go ahead in the stadiums and stuff like that. And then tonight's result with Spain really meant that it's going to be a bit unpredictable on the pitch as well, which is great.
Connor, there's always a chance for controversy outside the stadiums in Brazil with all the turmoil that was going on within the country. And also, don't forget, FIFA has a great ability, much like a dictatorship, to suppress certain stories from getting out. So we'll see over the next few days what can happen in Brazil.
Dictatorship was a very well-used word in that sentence. All
right, gentlemen, well, let's talk about that Spain game at the Arena Fonte Nove, which was the big game of the day. Of course, we're talking about the Netherlands and Spain. It ended 5-1. It could have gone so much differently as Spain got off to an early start with a 27th minute penalty from Xavi Alonso. Let's go to that penalty first, guys. Was that a penalty as Diego Costa went down in the box? From replays, it looked like maybe he went down a little bit too easy. Perhaps it was the angle that I saw it from. Connor, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, well, I actually covered the game for the fight, and at first glance it looked a stonewall penalty, but then I saw it again, and it did look as if he left his foot in to be taken. But there's another angle that kind of captures it really well, where he's not even looking at the defender. So he's just trying to put his foot on the ground, and it happens that it lands on the defender's leg. So I think the penalty was a correct decision.
Yeah, I think true as well. If the defender's going to lunge in kind of in the way that he did, and go to ground like that in the box, it's always kind of leaving yourself a bit open to the referee making a decision like that. So I think the Dutch can't and won't, given how they went on to play, have too many complaints about it.
Yeah, I agree. It's really, what you could say about it is that above anything else, it was poor defending by De Vrij. He put himself in a situation where he could potentially give away the penalty, and I think definitively you could see that Diego Costa actually just steps on his ankle and kind of goes over because it was dragged out from under him. If it wasn't given, it would have been fine, but it was, and luckily it did not affect the result of the game. So,
do you guys think that penalty was as shocking? I mean, obviously it wasn't quite as shocking the way you guys are explaining it as last night's penalty that was given to Fred.
No, and I think the follow will be different because, as I just said, one definitely had a great impact on that result, and Fred's was, he had hands on him, but it was very clearly a bit of a flop. I don't think Costas could necessarily be called conning the referee, and it's a difficult call to make, and certainly it didn't have any effect on the outcome, so you can be thankful for it.
I think a big difference between the two would be that Fred just felt contact and took a conscious decision to throw himself onto the ground, whereas Costa genuinely just lost his balance.
The Netherlands did turn it around right before halftime with a goal from Van Persie, later to be followed by a goal from Arjen Robben, and then Stefan de Vrij redeemed himself with a goal of his own before another goal by Van Persie and Robben. Padraig, how did the Dutch turn this game around after being down a goal early on?
I think, Drew, that they just showed absolutely no fear whatsoever of the Spanish and almost showed them no respect. Obviously, there was the respect there, being that they're playing the world champions and the team who beat them last time out, but they didn't seem intimidated in any way. They seemed perfectly happy to play their own style. A lot of the time, I think as well, Spain were quite wasteful with the ball, and it wasn't their usual kind of rhythm got going for any large spells. I thought Holland always looked comfortable, and then getting the goal just before half time, Van Persie, unbelievably good header, although the defence was probably just caught a bit too high for maybe Del Bosque's liking, and then after the break it really got exposed after that. I think Robin was unbelievable. It's the kind of thing he's shown that he can do week in, week out with Bayern Munich, and that pace just it devastated them. Van Persie as well, obviously, had a big impact on the result. I think there was a lot of pressure on him back at home. I think the first goal was only his second ever goal in the World Cup, so for a player who's like him, he's not always played as a centre forward, but there was pressure on his shoulders to deliver, and he certainly relished the pressure that was on his shoulders, because he was absolutely outstanding start to finish.
I think Podrick touched on something there. He said Spain were wasteful, and he's spot on. Just before Robin Van Persie got Holland back into the game, Andres Iniesta played a brilliant pass through for David Silva, who had the chance to make it 2-0, and he completely just, as if he was showboating already, he tried to chip the keeper, and it was just a simple save. And then pretty much they went down the other end straight away and equalised. That changed the game from there on in.
Yeah, I think once Spain were really on the back foot when they went down, they were shocked, and there was I guess what people generally see is that when you go down to Spain, they're better than anybody at just holding possession and running it out. But once the Netherlands went up, it was just a show, and Piqué and Ramos looked like they had no confidence playing next to each other. Of course, this time around, Piqué was particularly just caught out of position repeatedly, and I think a big problem is that Sergio Busquets was pretty anonymous throughout the game. And I think playing Robin up front with Van Persie, those two guys together, was just devastating, and just Spain had no answers for it at the back. And of course, Casillas had a pretty terrible game, which didn't help anyone either.
Well, perhaps we could look at this as the tale of two different teams. On one hand, we have the Dutch, who have always been the team that have self-destructed, and they were very defensive at the 2010 World Cup in that final against Spain. And just a few days ago, Podrick, I believe we talked about the Dutch were already self-destructing. Tonight looked far from the truth. On the other hand, we have Spain, who look very tired, who have been together since, a lot of that team has been together since 2010 for the Euro Championships. So what do you think? Is this the end of the Spain dynasty?
Don't know, Drew. I'm always kind of wary, to maybe predict something like that on the back of one result. But it is like one huge result to lose 5-1. I know Italy went out of the last World Cup as defending champions without winning a game, but Italy were never outclassed in the manner that Spain were. I suppose a draw with New Zealand and that kind of thing is maybe as bad as getting beaten by another team that'd be on their level. But I'd be wary, kind of, as I said, of saying it's the end of them. But it's for Holland, I suppose. The last World Cup, you said, very defensive. People weren't too happy about that back at home. I think Johan Cruyff in particular was very angry. And then the last Euros, they went out having lost every game. It's always been a problem, you think, recently within the Dutch camp in particular, that kind of harmony in the dressing room. But that's something that, based on the evidence of this game, really seems to be there. And in comparison with Spain, or as you said, they've been together a long time. Some of them, I suppose you could argue, been there together since they were 9-10 years old. Some of the guys came through at Barcelona and that kind of thing. So maybe it is just a case of tired bodies, tired minds, and it may be just one tournament too many for them.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, the idea of sustaining that success and winning, what would be a fourth major tournament in a row, you could say it's bound to fall at some point, but it's tough to write them off at this point, even though this is an extremely disheartening result. I think the interesting thing will be to see how Del Bosque gets them to rebound from this and how they come back for the final two group games.
Well, let's talk about the goalkeeper for Spain, Iker Casillas, who was quite poor all night.
And won't, given how they went on to play, have too many complaints.